Oh, this definitely has to go into the Coffee Tales playlist. NYC sex workers rampant in open-air prostitution market amid lax enforcement. It's well after midnight on a Saturday morning, but traffic is as thick as rush hour along a 4-block industrial stretch in East New York, Brooklyn. Scantily clad women walk mid-block, their heels click-clacking on the asphalt as they move from car to car, leaning into driver's side windows to entice the next man in line. One woman on the sidelines, appearing disinterested, sips from a can of Red Bull through a straw. It's a rare break in a cycle that repeats for hours on end. Hop into the strangers' cars, riding out of view for 10, sometimes 30 minutes, then getting dropped back off to do it all again. This open-air sex market has operated in plain sight on Friday and Saturday nights for months. The women, many likely trafficking victims, how did they know they're trafficking victims? Stop drivers to line up for their services. Their pimps pull the strings from the shadows. How do you know that? How do you know they even have pimps? The authorities largely turn a blind eye to it all amid a shift away from cracking down on prostitution, a post-investigation has found. That leaves the women and their handlers undeterred from doing a brisk enough business that traffic backs up along the stretch, enough for one reporter's Waze GPS app to detect the jam even in the dead of night. Apparent pimps and traffickers keep watch from flashy cars idling on the stretch, including a black Cadillac Escalade and a white Mercedes SUV. They're rarely seen interacting with the women they're forced into this life. Their mere presence enough to maintain a general sense of business-like order to the flesh trade. They always blame the men. Wow. On one night, a driver pulled his black Nissan sedan in behind a reporter's car and revved the engine as though to intimidate the scribe, who wasn't bothered again after relocating to another spot out of sight. When the police ride through in both marked and unmarked cars, business mostly carries on without interruption. While cruising down the block one night, a cop flashed the lights of their unmarked car in an apparent attempt at deterrence, but no other action. Current and former vice cops told the Post that there's little incentive to make arrests, with the Office of Brooklyn District Attorney Eric Gonzalez moving away from prosecuting prostitution cases, a shift that began in mid-2019. In January, Gonzalez's office moved to vacate some 262 warrants stemming from prostitution cases dating back to 2012. I remember that. The next month saw the statewide repeal of the so-called walking while trans law, barring law enforcement from arresting individuals who appeared to be loitering for the purpose of prostitution. In March, following the state's law's repeal, Gonzalez asked a judge to dismiss another 857 open cases spanning from 1970 through 2011. His Queens counterpart, Melinda Katz, followed the suit in asking a judge to dismiss and seal more than 670 cases, and Manhattan District Attorney Cy Vance in April tossed thousands of warrants and announced his office would no longer prosecute prostitution and unlicensed massage cases. The NYP insiders said the shift has done more harm than good for the sex workers, with pimps now feeling emboldened to ply their trade in plain view. They are only hurting the girls who are walking the strolls because they are the real victims, said one active vice cop. A lot of the girls are young and have pimps and are victims of human trafficking. Ironically, the DAs are doing the pimps a favor, the source continued. If they really cared about the girls, they would be out there at 3 in the morning offering them assistance instead of sleeping in their air-conditioned homes. A former vice cop concurred. They don't care about the girls. All they care about is decriminalizing everything, that source said. If they really cared, they would be on the streets trying to help these girls. Statistics obtained from the State Division of Criminal Justice Services show that the number of arrests in Brooklyn in which loitering for the purpose of prostitution was the top charge declined from 39 in 2018 to 13 in 2019 before hitting 0 in 2020. In other words, it was already going down. They're already getting rid of it. To coincide with the district attorney shift away from prosecution. But sex trafficking experts identified the real problem as the lack of enforcement against johns and pimps as compared to the women. A trend as old as prostitution itself that statistics continues to this day. A pimp doesn't give a if his victim is arrested if she's not. What a pimp cares about is the bottom line, the dollars, said Lauren Hirsch, a former sex trafficking and special victims prosecutor in Brooklyn. So if the police were arresting the johns and targeting the demand for commercial sex, then ultimately what it would do is cause a chilling effect. Hirsch, who now runs the anti-sex trafficking nonprofit World Without Exploitation, said one of the best ways to help traffic women was to target the demand. Want to make sure that those who are being exploited are getting the services that they need, not criminal penalties. But it's a real problem to give a free pass to these sex buyers who are fueling the market. Dorothy Leitholt, director of the Sanctuary for Families Legal Center and an attorney who has worked with victims of gender-based violence for nearly 50 years, agreed. They should be looking at the demand side because the sex trafficking industry is a demand-driven industry. She said, "We're happy that the NYPD is no longer arresting vulnerable women and girls and LGBTQ people, especially transgender women, but we want to see enforcement around demand. It really requires the NYPD and Brooklyn DA to tackle demand." She continued, "Are they doing everything possible to tackle demand and curtail this?" The DCJS stats show that while prostitution arrests have dried up in Brooklyn, busts of pimps and johns have also dropped. In 2018, there were 279 arrests in the borough, in which patronizing a prostitute in the third degree was the top charge. The next year, that figure plummeted to 82, less than a third of the previous year's total, the stats show. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, the number dropped to 28, and as of June 18, it was on pace to fall again with just 4 tallied this year. In other words, it was already going down. Busts for promoting prostitution have followed a similar trend. In 2018, Brooklyn saw a combined 36 arrests, which some degree of promoting prostitution was the top charge. That figure dipped in 2019 to 26, and by 2020 stood at just 7. There were only 2 such arrests in the borough this year through June 18th. Asked about the decline, an NYPD spokesman said that while overall busts of pimps and johns have declined citywide, enforcement priorities shifted in early 2017. They have grown to represent a greater share of prostitution and related arrests. Since the strategy shift in 2017, the arrests of those for selling sex, prostitution arrests have precipitously dropped. The department statement read in part, "At the same time, though the arrest of buyers, johns, and promoters of pimps of sex have gone down, those arrests now make up a greater percentage of the overall arrests the NYPD makes." A spokesman for the Brooklyn DA office noted that it is hardly turning away a torrent of prostitution cases and that it still aggressively pursues action against alleged pimps as cases come in. Since the start of the year, our office declined to prosecute a grand total of 3 prostitution-related arrests. The spokesman said in a statement, "We have a sex trafficking unit that vigorously prosecutes pimps and traffickers while working with service providers to get assistance to victims of trafficking. We stand ready to engage with communities, advocates, and the police to address any concerns about prostitution." City Councilwoman Inez Barron, whose district includes the tract, told the Post that she was unaware of its existence but vowed to have NYPD shut it down. "We certainly want to make sure that we maintain those kinds of conditions that make it pleasant and safe for everyone in the city," the Democrat said. Hirsch, who noted that many sex trade victims are minority, often LGBTQ women from poor backgrounds, some of whom were forced into the life amid pandemic-related economic downturn, likened the best approach to a ticket blitz to discourage lead-footed drivers. "It's kind of like the speed trap in a local neighborhood," she said. "People know to slow down before they get to the speed trap. They're not going to race through it. If sex buyers knew that there were arrests happening for sex buyers, those guys, the pillars of the community, the doctors, the lawyers, the accountants, and business people, will stop buying in those places," Hirsch said. Now it's just right there on the street. That was from the New York Post. That is a coffee tale. That's a coffee tale, no doubt. And if you look at these pictures, it's kind of funny. But you know what's coming. As soon as they decriminalized it, it took some time. You know, it wasn't immediate. But it took some time for there to be a traffic jam. Now it's open. So now New York City is going to be an open city, especially for prostitution and sex trafficking, so to speak. I love it when they go after the pimps and johns, right? Go after the men and give services to the women. Basically, they want the women to go broke and go hungry so they'll be forced to take it. It's really all it is. If the women really want, if the women really wanted to get off the street, all they have to do is point to the car and turn the pimp in. That's what a pimp said a long time ago. These women are volunteers because they could easily, especially in this environment, get a pimp or a john arrested at the snap of a finger. All they have to do is get out of the car and start yelling. They have police swarming right in on them. And in this kind of centric environment, man, they'd be doing some years. But everybody knows what the real reason is that they're doing this, and why they're allowing this kind of stuff is because they don't have jobs for these women. They don't. Especially after the pandemic. They don't have jobs for these women. It's like when they're decriminalizing this stuff. They know what's getting ready to happen. They do. And hopefully it doesn't. You know, hopefully that they'll find a way to avert it. Maybe the other story where there's not enough workers, these women can go for work for Burger King or McDonald's for $15 an hour and not hit the street. Maybe they can. But there's a reason that New York and in places in Louisiana and Baltimore, D.C., all these cities are trying to decriminalize and have decriminalized prostitution so that women can go out and ply the trade and make money and survive. But we'll be keeping an eye on it. You know, it's like anything else. Nothing happens immediately. It's not like it's overnight. Even COVID didn't happen overnight. That was a slow rollout. So don't expect this to happen overnight. But the thing is, at the end of the day, once they start doing this, turning women into coffee girls, guess what's going to happen to the price of sex? It's going to go down. In fact, somebody was mentioning, I do believe it might have been Black Mind, about somebody talking about a report about, I'm not even going to say what it was, a certain sex act for $80 and from an escort. And normally something like that would have cost $200. So the price is plummeting. So for the street chicks, it's probably going to drop down even further, because these are the straight up streetwalkers, right? When I talk about the renegades are much cheaper. And what happens when that price plummets? Because like when they rent moratorium quits and there's no federal unemployment insurance propping people up, you're going to see more of it, I'm afraid. But like I said, guys, be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. Want these chicks to come back to the table? I guess they're going to do it. But will you like the circumstances that they come back to the table with? In fact, I did a video. I was actually on a stream with Shar, and I may repost that as part of this, because we did talk about this. And the women didn't react very well to it. But that's the black pill for women. And women don't like the red pill, so you know they don't like the black pill. And they didn't. But anyway, that's all I got for this one. This is BGS out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.